It's not anything anybody should ever have to experience.
Tragedy in Schoharie. A deadly limousine crash kills 20 people outside a local country store. All 18 people in the limo, including the driver, were killed, along with 2 pedestrians.
Now, the Apple Barrel store in Schoharie sits at the bottom of a hill on Route 30. Investigators say the limo drove fast down the hill, then ran the stop sign, crashing into a vacant car and the 2 bystanders.
Good evening. I'm Elisa Streeter.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Lake. Now, federal investigators are calling this the deadliest crash in the U.S. in nearly a decade. They are on the scene because it involved a stretch limousine for hire, taking people to a birthday party.
We have News 10 live team coverage tonight as New York State Police and the National Transportation Safety Board are working to find out exactly what went wrong. We begin with News 10 ABC's Sam Damasio in Schoharie for the latest on the investigation.
Family and friends stopping by throughout the day, leaving flowers here at the scene of this horrific crash. One relative we spoke to tells me she's still in a fog, still trying to wrap her head around all of this. She tells me everyone who was inside that limo was doing the right thing, hiring a driver so they could safely enjoy a night out celebrating a birthday. State police wouldn't say where the limo was coming from or heading to, but they tell us as it approached the intersection of routes 30 and 30A, it blew right through the stop sign. The 2001 Ford Excursion limousine struck an unoccupied SUV in the parking lot of the Apple Barrel Country Store. That SUV then struck and killed 2 pedestrians standing nearby. The limo continued on into a small ravine where it came to an abrupt halt, striking an embankment and several trees. All 18 people inside, including the driver, were killed. In total, 20 fatalities.
This is the most deadly transportation accident in this country since February of 2009.
National Transportation Safety Board Chairman Robert Sumwalt says they put boots on the ground early this morning and say they'll be here for several days to thoroughly document the scene.
We will not be determining the cause of the crash while we are on scene. That will come at a later date. Nor will we be speculating on any cause of the crash.
State police say under New York law, only the driver and front seat passenger are required to wear seatbelts in limousines. The identities of the victims are not being released until autopsies are complete and all family is notified. More than 20 different agencies responding here to the scene yesterday, from state and federal investigators to volunteer fire and EMS. Tonight, our thoughts and prayers are with them and with the families of all 20 victims. Reporting in Schoharie, Samantha Damasio, News 10, ABC.
All right, Samantha, thank you. Well, also tonight, we are starting to learn more about the victims in the crash.
So many broken hearts tonight, and News 10's Jamie DeLine talked with a woman who has lost several family members in this tragedy. Jamie is live at Schoharie as well tonight. Jamie.
It's been an emotional weekend here in Schoharie County. Many people tonight remembering those who lost their lives in the limousine crash.
Like my brother said, he lost most of his family.
Barbara Douglas says on Saturday, her brother called to tell her that 4 of her nieces and their husbands had died in the accident, which happened near the Apple Barrel Cafe.
Beautiful girls physically and beautiful inside, and they were full of life, and they weren't that old, and they had their whole life ahead of them.
She says together they leave behind 3 children.
One had 2 and one of them had 1. One wasn't married and the other one just got married June 30th.
Douglas says her nieces were out celebrating a surprise 30th birthday party.
They were special girls. Special.
Locals say this intersection has been a problem for years. Now you can see where 30A and 30 merge. The limo was coming down 30, went right through the stop sign and ended up right there, the Apple Barrel parking lot. News 10's Justina Latimer spoke with locals who say they've been concerned about this intersection for years.
Broken car parts still left on scene following a deadly incident on Route 30A. Heading into this ditch here, you can still see tire marks from where the accident happened. Purple and pink flowers placed on scene in memory of the ones who lost their lives during the horrific crash in Schoharie.
It's not anything anybody should ever have to experience.
Jessica Kirby's family has owned the Apple Barrel Country Store for over 30 years. She says in all of those years, she has seen plenty of accidents, but none like this one that occurred just feet away from her business.
The intersection used to be different before, and there were accidents before, but never anything like what's happened in the last few years, and especially yesterday.
While the incident is still under investigation, people we spoke with in the area say the intersection at Route 30 and 30A can be a problem.
We have businesses here where traffic is entering and exiting, and people get impatient.
Apple Barrel owners say they can attest to this as well.
So 2 tractor trailers have gone down the hill before and actually have come across the parking lot into the field in the back here during store hours when somebody could have been killed.
But after so many near misses, this accident leaves many people mourning the loss of several loved ones whose lives may have been taken away too soon.
I'm hoping for closure. I'm hoping that, people like us that were affected find peace.
In Schoharie, Justina Latimer, News 10, ABC.
Thank you, Justina. Well, such a horrific crash is heartbreaking for first responders who can often suffer from post-traumatic stress after responding to a tragedy like this. Well, tonight the American Red Cross held a stress debriefing for first responders who were at the scene of yesterday's fatal limo crash. Approximately 10 volunteer firefighters from Central Bridge were at the scene. The firefighters say debriefing events like this help them cope with what they saw.
Calls like this are going to stick with you forever. It's just a matter of talking about it. The more you talk about it with those who were there and other first responders who also experienced similar type events, actually does help to alleviate the stress on you. And we're a small department, but real close knit. So in times like this, we're already got each other's back regardless, but at times like this, you really pull together.
Another stress debriefing will be taking place on Tuesday at the Schoharie Fire Department.
Chairman Robert Sumwalt with the National Transportation Safety Board telling reporters Monday that they found extensive damage to the front left side of the 2001 Ford Excursion. And at this point, he says there are no apparent skid marks at the intersection.
If an entire engine block is moved back and basically crushed, moved back past the driver's seat, that would indicate there was a lot of force and energy involved in that crash.
Major Robert Patnaud with the New York State Police says the driver did not have the appropriate license to operate the limo and that the company has been under scrutiny by the State Department of Transportation in the past. He went on to say that the limo should never have been out on the road in the first place, having failed several inspections. But Lee Kinlan, the attorney representing Prestige Limo, says otherwise.
We know that it had been inspected and passed a series of state inspections over the past couple of months, and it was safe to be on the road.
State police say they seized the remaining 3 vehicles from Prestige Limo and will be examining each of them. The NTSB still trying to determine whether the stretch conversion of the limo was in compliance with state and federal regulations. But they say because the vehicle was so badly damaged in the crash, they're still looking for the markings.
So there's a great deal of information that we need to seek back from manufacturers and other sources to find out what the FMVSS or the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards were applicable to this vehicle.
We've also learned chilling new details that the 17 victims hopped in this particular limo as a last resort.
I believe that they had tried to hire a different vehicle, but it canceled for some reason. So the subject in charge of this excursion scrambled and found this company to satisfy their needs for today.
First responders, who were some of the first ones on scene, are also struggling to come to terms with what they saw.
My guys jumped off the truck. They grabbed the jaws. I fired the jaws up. They went down there. Within 2 minutes, they had that car open. We were pulling bodies out. They were still alive. And we kept going.
Captain Aaron Bywater with the Central Bridge Fire Department tells me about the moments he arrived on scene of the tragic and deadly limo crash in Schoharie.
The things we saw was like a nightmare. I don't want anybody to see this. I just wish we could get some support.
He says it's the days after a tragedy like this that is most difficult on first responders.
Trained and trained and trained, and this is not what we're trained to deal with, is the aftermath.
Assemblyman Chris Haig thanking first responders for their unwavering work.
What they had to deal with here the other night is just unfathomable. It's one of the toughest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
And Bywater says the community can still count on all first responders to do the job at hand.
We're here for everybody, and if the tones drop, we're still responding.
A source briefed on the investigation tells me the district attorney has already been out to the scene and they are anticipating criminal charges in relation to this accident.
There are seat belts in the back. They're required to be, but you're not required to wear them.
Passengers riding in the back of limousines do not have to wear seatbelts in New York. And this is not the first time people have called for changes to limo safety regulations.
So the rule may very well change in the near future.
Limos, such as the ones Premier Transportation buys, are built in factories and required to meet stringent safety regulations. But it's when vehicles are converted into limos, there can be gaps in safety features.
They take the SUV, they cut it in half, they add on 20 feet, and they put it back together. But the brakes are the same brakes that it had in the beginning.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Tonight, hundreds of people gathered for a candlelight vigil at the Mohawk Valley Gateway Overlook pedestrian bridge in Amsterdam to show support for the families who lost their loved ones in Saturday's limousine crash in Schoharie. 20 large candles were lit in remembrance of the 20 lives lost in the accident.
And I know they've become angels in our eyes, in Jesus' eyes. And I'm really hurt and just saddened, and I really appreciate my family.
Many tonight writing messages of condolences for family members impacted by the tragedy, and several community leaders expressed their sorrow as well.
I am the superintendent of a district serving a community that was permanently changed Saturday afternoon. These are not the circumstances under which I wish we were here tonight.
One of the victims was a teacher in the Amsterdam School District. Tomorrow, school will be delayed and grief counseling will be offered.
News 10 ABC received these copies of 2 driver vehicle examination reports from an anonymous concerned citizen. The reports center on Prestige Limousine, the company which owns the limo involved in the fatal Schoharie crash. The first report taken in March of 2018, where a 2001 Ford stretch limo matching the year, make, and model of the vehicle involved in the crash was cited by DOT for several violations, namely a hydraulic brake line that was dangling and making contact with an axle. It was also cited for an inoperable emergency exit window and emergency side door. By state law, the company had 15 days to fix the problems, but it's unclear if they did. Months later, on September 4th, just 1 month before the fatal crash, a second inspection shows problems still existed with the emergency exits as well as the brake system. No one answered at their Gansford office, but Prestige's attorney told us that the vehicle had passed previous inspections and their focus was now on the driver.
We are currently looking into the licensure of the driver.
Limo driver Scott Lizenchia also perished in the crash, but on his GoFundMe page set up for his family, some are now leaving angry comments. His wife told us today that she's overcome by grief.
I love him and I'm in mourning, that's all.
There's people who are saying some not so nice things about him.
I know, and it's just not right. But I love my husband.
You love your husband?
I love him.
When people leave you and are gone, you say a lot of nice things about them. But we would have said those same nice things about Amanda every day. She was just that kind of person.
Fred Ehrlich, CEO of Living Resources, says Amanda Rivenberg was one of his most dedicated employees. She started her journey there in 2011 as a support professional.
And she worked directly with individuals with disabilities. We have this day program. They pick up 4 people at home and then take them to a special activity in the morning. They may have lunch somewhere and then an activity in the afternoon and then drive people back to their home.
She quickly worked her way up to second in command for the day program, overseeing some 90 employees.
To have that kind of responsibility at 29,
Right.
you know,
And
she
be
was
able
on
to
her
do
way.
it well.
Yeah.
The 29-year-old was a graduate of SUNY Plattsburgh, earning her degree in social work. One of 4 victims who attended the university, including her good friend Amy Steenberg, whose birthday they were celebrating that fateful day.
What do you do with your emotions when somebody you saw them and that was their last day? You're not going to see them again. It wasn't like they had a disease or a health condition and you could start grieving and planning ahead of their not being there. We're just going to miss her terribly.
I just showed up with it. Like, nobody knew about it. I just built it, and me and my girlfriend Anita took it last night.
A center beam meant to hold up John Borst's maple barn is now the central beam holding a community together.
I just thought about making crosses. I don't know. I just started cutting crosses.
20 crosses now sit on that slab of wood next to the ravine where the limo landed. They represent the mothers, daughters, fathers, and sons who died in Saturday's fatal accident.
I almost gave up at one point, and I was like, I sat there and I thought about it, and I don't know, I just had a feeling come over me and I did it.
An unexplainable emotion is giving others an outlet to write their feelings, coping with a sudden loss, something Borst knows all too well.
That took me like a long, long time to get over like that. I'm gonna cry.
It's the painful memory of another fatal accident that prompted him to create his first cross.
I got kind of emotional over it when I seen this, and I remember the cross on the tree that we did for him.
One last cross he made sits on a window ledge of the barn he's building as a reminder of the souls lost. So many souls lost on one day.
On the eve of Amy King's 30th birthday, the Amsterdam varsity girls soccer team is dedicating their senior night to the King sisters, 3 of whom played soccer on this exact field.
I don't think there's any words. We're a big family, and it hurts.
Coach Rich Monroe knew them well. In fact, he coached all 3 of them.
All 3 of them had an infectious smile.
I just talked to Abby last week about bringing Amy to the game, and they were supposed to be here with us tonight.
But tonight, Nicole Benton and other former teammates are attending Pink Out without the King sisters.
They were the life of the party. All of the girls had amazing personalities. Never a dull moment with them.
It doesn't register, and when people that aren't from our community ask you about it, you can't put into words what these girls and what their whole family meant to everyone.
During a press conference, state police lay much of the blame for this weekend's fatal crash squarely upon Naaman Hussein.
Sole responsibility for that motor vehicle being on the road on Saturday rests with Naaman Hussein.
State police say as the person in charge of daily operations of Prestige Limousine, Naaman Hussein was well aware that the vehicle involved in the fatal Schoharie crash was not supposed to be on the road.
Of Prestige Limo in Saratoga County was issued written violations by the New York State Police and the New York Department of Transportation that the driver he hired should not have been operating the type of vehicle involved in Saturday's crash.
Hussein of Cohoes was picked up by police during a controlled traffic stop along 787 this morning. He was then charged with criminally negligent homicide. Naaman and his brother Shair work for their father's company based out of this Gansevoort motel, while the father is said to be living in Pakistan. Shair Hussein rushed out of Troop G trying to evade questions about the crash and his brother. Your company was cited twice for violations. How do you respond to this now that there's 20 people dead? The family attorney Lee Kinlan said investigators had jumped the gun in making this arrest.
And what we have right now are some initial indications that something may have happened that may have been wrong. Where we get from some paperwork problems to proving a criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt there's so much in between.
He tried to diminish Naaman's control of the company and seemed to be shifting blame to state agencies. I asked why, if the family knew there were problems with the vehicle, was it out on the roadway? You did not have the special license to drive this limo, and according to the state police, they were told that in August.
Right. And again, you know, these are a lot of things coming into our own internal investigations, into the investigations being conducted by the insurance company. And so, Anya,
So why was he allowed to drive?
Anya, at this point, there are some things that unfortunately I can't answer, that I just don't know the answers to, and rather than get out in front of my skis, which frankly I'm complaining about right now with some other people, I'd rather say, look, there are some answers I don't know yet. You can imagine what people would say in a situation like this. I will not give dignity to those individuals who think that they can exert some sort of power over this case.
That was Lee Kinlan, Numan Hussein's attorney, earlier tonight discussing the death threats he and his client have faced since Saturday's fatal limo accident. $150,000 bond set and paid since Saturday's fatal limo accident. It was a very different scene as Hussein was seen wearing a black shirt and gym shorts, arriving in handcuffs for his arraignment. Hussein's charged with 1-count criminally negligent homicide for the 18 in the limo and 2 pedestrians dead. Cameras were not allowed in the courtroom when the judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. Following the arraignment, Kinlan says his client was not trying to flee the area when he was arrested, only attempting to get away from his home since his address has been made public, though it's alleged Hussein had his bags packed in the car.
He felt as if he could be in danger at that house, so at that moment he was just leaving and didn't really have a plan other than to get away.
The next court appearance is set for October 23rd.
Just down the road from that horrific crash, a community comes together, providing comfort to one another in the face of unthinkable tragedy. A powerful moment as first responders embrace.
The healing process doesn't end on something like this.
A vigil for a small town that's become the site of great loss.
It shows just how tough we are up here in upstate New York. We band together, we take care of our own.
20 candles shine, one for each of the victims, their names read aloud.
Richard M. Steenberg.
And loved ones stand in their honor.
Jared Bentley says in 2015, he drove for a limo company that shared services and vehicles with Prestige Limousine, based out of this Gansevoort motel. The company and its operator now at the center of a criminal investigation. Jared says it wasn't uncommon for his boss, who shared a garage with Prestige, to borrow Prestige's vehicles if one of his broke down, including a 2001 Ford Excursion stretch limo, which Jared believes is the same one involved in the fatal Schoharie crash.
Did you feel safe getting behind the wheel of this particular limousine?
Absolutely not. I did not feel comfortable at all. Believe it or not, I was terrified.
What was wrong with it?
I knew that the brakes were actually the problem. You couldn't stop. You just couldn't stop.
He claims his company and Prestige did the bare minimum with regards to repairs. He also says the same limo even broke down while he was transporting local high schoolers to the prom.
It was smoking up underneath. There was, parents were all scared. They did not want their kids riding it.
Jared says he left the company, but not before contacting the Department of Transportation, the same agency that found several violations with the limo involved in the crash.
How would you know the one that you said you're having brake problems with in the past is the
Right.
same one as the one that ended up crashing into the ravine?
Because the day that we were supposed to go to do the prom, he had borrowed that vehicle from Prestige.
He says he was able to identify the limo's unique exterior while watching news reports.
Fast forward to where we are now. Are you surprised that something like this happened?
Yes and no. I'm not surprised because they never stayed up on top of their vehicles for maintenance.
I reached out to the DOT to verify Jared's claims that he filed that complaint. They did get back to me, but they referred me to the New York State Police. As for his former employer, I tried to reach out to him via many different phone numbers I found online, but all of them have been disconnected. The man holding a rocket launcher in this FBI photo is Shahed Hussein, the same man whose limo company is now at the center of one of the worst crashes in recent U.S. history. Back in 2003, the then Department of Motor Vehicles interpreter agreed to being part of an anti-terrorism sting after he got caught accepting bribes at work. The FBI's target? An Albany imam named Yassin Aref and Mohammed Hussein, a naturalized U.S. citizen and pizzeria owner. Their defense team argued that Aref thought he was witnessing an agreement of a loan from Shahed to Mohammed Hussein, but that Hussein continually steered the conversation to weapons and terror groups.
He would talk to my client's co-defendant, Mohammed Hussein, in Urdu, and Mohammed would say things like, "I'm a good American citizen, I'm not going to violate the law." And then Shahed Hussein would go to the FBI and say, "Oh, he said he wants to attack America." Well, they wouldn't get the translations for that for months with their FBI translators. So meanwhile, they think, oh, this is a great case.
In the end, Aref was acquitted of most of the 30 counts against him. Yet he and his co-defendant were sentenced to 15 years behind bars. But Aref's attorney says Shahed Hussein's future was much brighter. She says she was shocked to learn that he went on to work for the FBI as a paid informant in at least 2 more stings.
They paid him at least around $100,000 in that case, and then they kept using him.
Hussein's prospects grew to include buying up this Saratoga County motel, which became the base of operations for his Prestige limo. Fast forward to October 6th of this year, there was the crash, 20 lives lost. Then, a subsequent arrest of Hussein's son on a charge of criminally negligent homicide for allegedly allowing the limo on the road after it failed 2 DOT inspections.
All he does is lie and commit fraud, and they knew that, and they enabled him. He never would have been able to run this limo company if they hadn't paid him all these hundreds of thousands of dollars and kept him from going to prison.
State police say they've been working hand in hand with the NTSB since the tragic limousine accident in Schoharie. But police say there are certain things they need to do before they release certain evidence to any outside agency they may be assisting.
Everything is done in a methodical fashion to ensure that a case is either criminal or not criminal.
Richard O'Brien is the BCI captain with State Police Troop G. He says it's important for them to gather any evidence they may need in a criminal investigation to present to the district attorney.
We do not have a second opportunity to get a case right or to make a correction.
Evidence, like the limousine, is especially important when witnesses may be unavailable.
We have to then assemble a case that becomes the voice for those individuals.
In fact, state police say the vehicle is the most important piece of evidence in this case. They also say if the NTSB were allowed to handle the limousine before the criminal investigation is finished, it could jeopardize any potential charges. The NTSB says they have had an investigator look at the vehicle and they've been cooperating with state police. They expect a preliminary report on the accident to be released in the next few weeks.
The Schoharie County District Attorney is still actively pursuing criminal charges connected to the crash. State police say after they've finished their investigation, the defense attorney in the case will have a chance to look at the limo as well. I'm told there is a tentative schedule to make that happen within the next 2 weeks. After all of that, the limo will then be turned over to the NTSB.
I've been here at the Schoharie County District Attorney's Office for hours waiting to get a response from the District Attorney herself about a letter that was posted on the NTSB's Twitter page. In a letter addressed to Schoharie County District Attorney Susan Mallory, the federal organization says that Mallory has not responded to any of its requests. The NTSB wants immediate access to the limo and other vehicles impounded from the limo company. The letter says although the NTSB team has been successful in gathering some secondary information, it tells the district attorney, quote, "The delays you've imposed have denied the NTSB access to primary essential evidence, resulting in safety-critical evidence being lost." The district attorney has previously said that because this is a criminal investigation, state police needs to examine the limo first, as well as the defense attorney. However, the letter says that the defense attorney's inspection of the limo was completed back in mid-November, saying, quote, "The agency has received no response to our subsequent request to examine the vehicle." The operator of Prestige Limo, Nauman Hussein, has been charged with criminally negligent homicide. The family of victim Amanda Rivenberg has since filed a lawsuit against the limo company as well as the State Department of Transportation.
I just don't want this to happen to anybody else. She was too young. She had a lot to live for. Nobody should have to go through this.